Welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast, a production from Empowering Pumps and Equipment as the voice of the pump and related equipment industry. Hey, everybody! Welcome to episode 51 of the Empowering Industry Podcast. I'm your host, Charli Matthews, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bethany Womack.
Hey, Charli. Thanks for bringing me back. Thanks, everyone, for listening to us like you do every week. We're super excited to be here with you. And wherever you're listening to us or watching it, please subscribe, like, and review. It helps us show up when other people are searching for our podcast so they can find it just like you. This week, like we do every week, we're going to cover social media, preview the news from Empowering Pumps and Equipment, and connect you with an industry influencer. But Charli, how did your week go this week?
I had a super busy, jam-packed week, and it was fun. So we had some prep for Energy 2.0, which is this week. And we also have just like a lot of activity online. So there were some Twitter chats that I was a part of, even jumped on Clubhouse a couple of times. We can talk about that later on the podcast, let everybody know what Clubhouse is. But it's more of an audio platform. So I feel like I've got the audio down now that we've been doing these podcasts. But also, we were working with empowering women and getting ready for that and just really diving in. So there's a lot of different moving parts. And I think I like that. I think that's when I feel my best at work. What about you?
Well, I do want to say I'm going to need you to explain Clubhouse to me at some point because I don't know what it is. Well, I've heard of it, and it's been one of the things that I've been like, I'll learn about it later. So you get to keep your title as the social media
That's right.
queen, innovator, early adopter, and help me later on understand what it is.
It'll be fun. I'll try it out a little bit more so I know a little bit more about it before I'm asked the questions.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
what else did I do? So, like you, we are working a lot on empowering women. I just got to spend a lot of time brainstorming and thinking through promotions and what we need to do. And I really enjoy those kind of weeks where I can turn other things off and just focus for a couple of days on one thing and really look big picture at what we want to do and start to see some results. Which one of the things that we're pushing right now for empowering women that I want to make sure all the listeners know is that we still have some sponsorships available for the event. It's a great way to get your company name in front of a lot of women in the industry and really just to show that you're a supporter of empowering women in industry is big, I think.
Yeah, and not just us, like our company, Empowering Women, but just as a
Yes, as
industry
a
as a whole.
Yeah.
Yes, like you're really showing your company's brand and culture when you invest in that. So we see it, and it makes a big difference to us, and I know it makes a big difference to the industry as well.
Agreed. Okay, well, let's just go ahead and jump right into Let's Get Social.
All right.
This is where we're going to talk about something that we saw on social media that we think you need to know heading into your week. But before we get there, Charli's going to tell us about our meetups that are coming up this week. So
yes, I'm really excited. This is the week. So the Empowering Women's Meetup is going to be April the 14th. That's every second Wednesday at 11 Central Time. Super fun to get these ladies together. The Empowering Brands Meetup is going to be April the 20th. That's Tuesday. We're doing that every third Tuesday at 3 p.m. Central Time. So fun.
You need to pre-register for those events so that you get this Zoom link. I'll have the link to register for them in the show notes that you can click on and be there and be excited to see our smiling faces and talking about the podcast or, wherever the community decides that we need to talk about today. That's where we'll be.
Speaking of talking about us, if you want to get a shout out on the show, stay connected with us at Empowering Pumps and use the hashtag Empowering Industry Podcast. And I have a shout out of somebody who did the best shout out on their end for us.
Also known as my new best friend.
Yes, absolutely. He did such a good job. Leroy Matthias. I'm sorry. I knew how to say it when I was practicing. But Leroy Matthias, he is the mechanical engineer, and he is looking for employment right now. But this is what he did. He created a post that talked about the cover story, talked about the FlowServe podcast episode that we did just a couple weeks ago. He used the hashtag Empowering Industry Podcast. He mentioned me or mentioned empowering pumps and equipment. I mean, he just really impressed me because he did a really great shout out and mentioned us. And so here's your shout out back, Leroy Matthias.
Everyone go and follow him if maybe you can help him get plugged in and find a spot to land and just network with a fellow mechanical engineer. I think is awesome. So thanks,
Yeah,
Leroy.
and I think it's really cool when they pulled out the details of the podcast. He's really listening, and in order to help other people, it was just, that's what I hope that happens from this, right? That people hear things and they can educate others and themselves. So, I guess we're going to do that next, right?
For sure. Yeah. So, Charli, you found a great article to share with us for the social segment today, all about how social media helps with your SEO. The article's from Search Engine Journal. I'll include the link in our podcast. And the main thesis of the whole article is that yes, social media does help your SEO efforts, but it's more complicated than just a yes or no. So, Charli, why don't you start
Yes.
us off?
Yes. Let's give some framework about what from Google and social media and SEO. I mean, really, it's a theory, a lot of this, but the official word from Google is that social media does not equal, your ranking factor. It doesn't really help your factor. But let's go into that a little deeper. Google treats it like Facebook and Twitter, like it's a word, like a web search. So it's not directly tied to your ranking, but it does help if you have links there. So links that the idea of SEO is that you generate links back to your website. We want people there. So anytime that we can create links, that's a good thing, whether they're on social media or not. And so Google says that social shares don't count as individual links. But when you have a whole bunch of people sharing your content, you're generating links back, multiple links, and it's going to help your ranking. And I know this to be true, because I can see what comes up when you search for different terms. And your social media channels come up first. So I believe it does help. It's just not directly tied to each individual post.
Yeah, and we've all been there where you search for something in Google and a Facebook page is the third thing that pops up because it's treated, like they said, just like a normal website for, that it will search and be included in your search results.
Mhm.
Um, we've seen it, like you've seen it with your own eyes, those show up. And so this definitely can only help. And so they talk about how social media helps with SEO in four main ways. The first is the potential for links. And like Charli said, the more shares, the more possibilities that people will click on your content and get to your webpage. And if you have high quality content, people will want to reuse it and link it in their content. So the example would be, we have something really awesome about how a reciprocating pump works. And then later someone is writing a blog and they reference back to our article. So that link would really help us. And basically the more backlinks you have, it really helps with where you show up in the rankings. And I think the big takeaway I got from the potential for links is that it's all about really quality content, that content marketing that we
Absolutely.
talked about. And, if you have good stuff, you need to share it. That's how people find you.
That's right. And if you're sharing that on social media and then it's so easily shared to others, it's so super connected, your network's there. And so the next part we want to talk about is building an audience. And I think that that's part of that. Social media creates that brand awareness, which makes it, likely for users to click on your link. So they know who you are, they show up in the Google search. And click rates, they do actually impact your rankings.
Yeah.
And so that audience and having that really good piece of content that you share, and people are like, wow, that's quality. I want to share that. I want my name attached to that. Is definitely going to, be the best post that you can have on the social media channels. So look to do that.
Well, and when you have an audience, they trust you. You create this relationship with them. And so then when you show up on the search thing, they're like, I know Charli. I trust Charli. Let me click on Charli's thing that popped up on the search thing. Um,
For sure.
yeah. And then even building further on that, their third point was branded searches and how social media can lead to having branded searches. So now you've built this audience, people who trust you, and now they want to search for something. And that's when they include your company name with their search term. For example, empowering pumps, valve training. Maybe someone's looking for some valve training, and but they know that we're a leader in that space in the industry. And so they would type in empowering pumps, valve training. That's a branded search, and that helps your rankings even more.
Yeah, and I think that's what we see happening, right? That when you go into, even if you're looking for something, you type in something, you see somebody's name that you're familiar with, you're probably going to click on that choice if there's
100%.
three.
Yes.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'm going to that one. So lots of different ways that you can use social media. I wanted to point out one other thing. It says, don't forget YouTube. YouTube is the second largest search engine. We've talked about that.
Which every time I hear that, I'm shocked.
Yeah, and I think it's because we don't think about it in the B2B world maybe as much as
Yes.
like you do when you're like, I got to figure something out at home.
How do I
work on
car
my
battery?
sink? Yes, exactly. And DIY, we get it for that. But so with that though, you want to share a video. What's the best way to do that? Well, if you're wanting to drive people to your website, there's ways to embed YouTube videos. But I think about it the other way too. Have your video on YouTube in case somebody stumbles upon it there through search, because people are searching YouTube. And so, yeah, I think that is just another way. And I always want to point this out because I kind of forget that YouTube is in this social media world, but it's definitely counts.
Yeah, and it's been fun since we started posting the podcast there to see, more people viewing it there and finding it there than were just through the podcast apps. And so, I've seen it work. I definitely like it. And just to kind of sum up everything that we've talked about for how social media impacts your SEO is that, we will never 100% know how the algorithm works, like Charli said. So we just have to use the information that we can see in front of us and great articles and resources like this one that tells us really social media is a great long-term strategy. It's not a sprint, it's definitely a marathon. You want to build those relationships with your customers, continue sharing quality, good content on a frequent basis, and that will really, in the long term, help you shoot up in your Google rankings.
Yeah, and I have to go back. You made me think about something on empowering pumps. Some of the articles that we posted, when we first started empoweringpumps.com, get some of the most hits still today because it's really good content. And so it does last. It's worth the investment to have good content and to share it. And then, I also want to talk about social media just as in general. There's so many different platforms and you're like, I don't have time to do this maybe and be a part of all of them to post maybe as frequently as I do. But you should be there. I think people look for companies on each social media channel. And so I think even if you didn't post, every day on a channel, that you'd at least have a presence there, and it says who you are so they can find you and not maybe, make sure that you include a link to your website, and just be present.
Yeah, well, because you're working with a new company, the first thing I go and check is their social media to see if they're active, if they're real,
Right.
which is
That's
crazy that
exactly
I'm
right.
going to believe that over just like a normal website. But I guess maybe the added effort to get it done makes me
I think
trust them
even,
more.
yeah, I
Maybe
think
I'm a
even when I
millennial,
meet,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I think even when I meet somebody in person, I still have to like check them online to make sure like that they're legit working for that company and
Yeah.
what they stand for, what's their personality. I a little bit stalk most people, so a good
Things you
stalker.
learn about Charli.
Yeah,
Episode 51 of the podcast.
that's right. That's right. Well, let's get
Oh,
into the news.
yes, let's do it. Here is where we're going to. Sorry, I sound like a newscaster with that news. I love it.
We want to be. Yeah,
I
here we
know.
go.
I'm still just in shock. Okay. This is a segment where we're going to preview news that's coming out from Empowering Pumps and Equipment newsletter this week. If you're not signed up for it, the link is in the show notes. You have no excuse. You need to go sign up for it so you can stay up to date on all the things happening in the news. We're going to start
Yes.
out with the person of the week. Who do you have, Charlie?
Yes, so this is one of my favorites because he's part of my team. I met him at the Leadership Launchpad project, and so I spent 12 weeks with this guy. Brian, he's the
That's a lot.
director of. Yeah,
And
every
he still
Sunday for
likes
12
you?
weeks. I
And
don't
he
know
still
about that.
likes you? Are we okay, just checking.
No, we're not sure. So anyway, this is Brian. He's the director of maintenance and reliability for T. Parker Host, and this was just a different, amazing company that I didn't really understand. So he was working in Louisiana at the time, and it was the time of the hurricanes coming through, like almost every week. So they would like move the equipment, come back in, have to set it back up, and it was just like this constant moving. Not sure they got
Yeah.
much work done that week or couple weeks. But he's such a leader, and he wants to be a leader. He wants to be there for his people, and just an inspiration. And I enjoyed this entire team at the Leadership Launchpad, and they have a special place for me. And so I know you're going to like him. He is in the digital magazine as our Pump Talk celebrity, so make sure you check that out. But it's also in the newsletter. So, yeah. What did you think, Bethany?
Double feature for him. Yeah, I read through, we have a form, like questions and answers we send for our people of the week. Like, how did they get here? What do they like? And I pulled this quote because I really liked it. He said, "I'm most proud of having a legacy to leave behind that builds people up and helps them see their true value as maintenance humans and just humans in general. Having a hand in the positive growth of another is the most rewarding and profounding thing to me." And I mean,
Yeah,
that
and he
that
did
feels
that
like
for
I
me.
want that
So,
to be my goal, and like I want to leave people with that feeling after I meet them and work with them, and
and he
that's
definitely
really
does.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, he does, and it definitely changed our life for the better. And so, check out this feature. If you know somebody cool like this that you want to nominate, please do so. We love meeting all of the people in the industry, no matter if they work on pumps or any other type of equipment. So, just had to throw that out there.
Yeah. Okay, also, we talked about it last week, but I just wanted to remind everyone that the most recent digital edition is out now. It's out for you to read. The link is in the show notes. The link is on our website. The link should be easy to find for all of
And
you,
I
I
worked
hope.
really, really hard on
Yeah.
it. So, go check it out and tell me what you think of it.
Yeah, FlowServe has an awesome cover article. When you go through the digital magazine, it's cool because videos pop out at you. It's one of the benefits of having it in digital form. It's a really fun digital scroll, I think. So you definitely want to check it out.
Awesome. Okay, so next item on our news is trash and sewage pump packages, and this is really neat. It's definitely something we need. So stay with us. RWN Pump and Fabrication. They are a leading manufacturer in pump packages, and so they fabricate all kinds of skids in house. They supply pumps for the rental fleet, construction needs, or your construction needs, in industrial bypass applications. They offer silent enclosure options, custom certified trailers, you name it. But to go into a little more detail, their trash and sewage pump packages, include some top brands that can handle fluids ranging for 500 to 20,000 GPM. And I had to really look at that to make sure I got that,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
But you should look at it in the newsletter and read all about it, because if you are in need of a pump package, they're in Springtown, a Texas-based facility. So shout out Texas. I know when Bethany hears Texas, she loves that. So yeah, check them out.
Yeah. Texas forever, everybody. Uh, okay. The article I want to share is a white paper from Triangle Pump that's on our website that you can download. We have lots of white papers there. It's a great resource and training tool that we want all of you to be able to use. And this specific one from Triangle Pump is called Suction Design Guide for Reciprocating Plunger Pumps. So it's from Triangle Pump Components, is a handy resource that will better help you understand section head calculations and installation considerations. What you can expect out of this guide is you will find helpful tips on how to maintain adequate section head, avoiding vapor cavities in the pump system, and then installation guidelines that'll help you avoid suction head problems and more. It's a great white paper. You're definitely going to want to download this guide so you can have it on hand if you're ever having to deal with installation. of these machines.
Well done. I love that. I mean, what a great job on the news.
I really like the news because it's an opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about the industry. And so, thanks for trusting me to recap one of the news things,
Yeah, and
and the
she,
audience for listening.
yes, exactly. And make sure that you check out all of those links in the newsletter because they do provide that education and research that we're looking for to make better decisions in the industry. So, yeah, a win-win.
Yeah. Also, a win is the industry interview that we have this week. Every week, you find someone awesome. I've actually virtually met this person, so I'm excited to have him on the podcast. Why don't you introduce our guest for us?
Yes, it is Bob Latino. He is the CEO of Reliability Center Inc. and so much more. So, Bob has been facilitating RCA, that's root cause analysis, for his clientele around the world for over 36 years. He's taught 10,000 students, over 10,000 students. And I just think that that's phenomenal to kind of look back and think about how many people's lives you've touched. He has authored and co authored 6 books about reliability, human error reduction, which I think is a lot of that root cause. And so, he encourages us to write. He encourages us to be active on social. And, he's always at our meetups. So, go back and take a look at the time to come to one of our meetups and you can meet him like we have virtually. And yeah, it's a good time. And I know you're going to love this interview.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing it and sharing it with the listeners. So, without further delay, here's the interview.
Hey, Bob, welcome to the Empowering Industry Podcast.
Hi,
I
Charlie.
think, it's so great to have you. And, you need no introduction really, but go ahead and introduce yourself and tell people kind of who you are and what you do.
Alrighty, my name is Bob Latino. I am CEO of a company called Reliability Center Incorporated, about 2 hours south of Washington, D.C., on the east coast of the U.S. At least my company started in 1972, and we were a research and development group for a company at the time called Allied Chemical Corporation. But today, through many acquisitions, they ended up being Honeywell. And
Yeah.
we were chartered to take the principles of reliability engineering from aviation and bridge them over into heavy manufacturing. And that was 1972. That's nearly 50 years ago. We
Wow.
were chartered to look at equipment, process, and human reliability. We set up a worldwide network of roles and responsibilities and infrastructure of a reliability department. And in 1985, the founder and director of that group, not by coincidence, was Charles J. Latino, my father, which explains the job. He retired and he bought his department out of the corporation. And since 1985, we've been able to take all that R&D that we developed and those reliability principles and really apply them anywhere. How's that?
Well, yeah, there's so much there. I think, it's hard to just start and just ask one question from all of that. But number one is, you've got that role model in your dad and being able to see kind of what he created. How did that drive you forward in what you're doing every day?
That's an interesting question. And because I feel like I grew up in a reliability household because
Yeah.
to him, reliability was not a job; it was a way of life. And I think it's even a double-edged sword. And I've written several articles about this. Sometimes it's a curse because
Yeah, I say that about my son who's very particular. Everything is black and white, and you got to get used to little shades of gray in there.
well, when I was really taught foresight and proaction from a very young age to always look, from a risk standpoint and foresee what was going to happen. And not everybody's like that. And it doesn't go well with teachers when you're in school. It doesn't go well with authority
I
figures.
can see you in school right now.
Well, and you don't take anything at face value. You question everything. But that's the way that I was raised. And you have to learn that there's certain ages where that becomes more suitable than others. And And teachers in grade school don't like that. Then you become a
Yeah.
troublemaker.
Yeah, but and I've heard these stories before, kind of like entrepreneurs, because we do similar to the story about is Andrew, my son Andrew. Sometimes I just say I love him and I hate him because he's just going to do it his way, and he needs everything right now, and that's the thing. It's that's going to be a problematic when you're trying to train somebody, but you're going to want that in your business later because that's who brings the ideas.
Well, it's interesting because when I went to work for my father in 1985, I could write another book on running a family business because I worked
Yeah,
for him before he passed in 2007. My whole family worked together for that many years, and when most of my problems with my father in the office were because we were both very much alike, and
that's right.
that was the problem. And it's very difficult for those who are contemplating family businesses or are in them. They'll understand. But when you're in a family business and the father is running it, then it becomes very difficult a balance between being a boss and being a father because if you're one of the kids, you're doing something that other people would get fired for, but you're also the father kicks in and say, I can't get rid of my son. Because
That's right.
there
That's
was a
right.
lot of situations where I would have let me go.
Right. Me and Carter, we run this business and, we're not blood family, but definitely has that same dynamic of, there's no way I would keep you here if weren't married to me, those type of moments. But then you need them. You need the opposite of that too. Me and Carter are opposites in that way. Or I'm just telling myself that because we're probably alike. Anyway, Bob, this is about you. And I just wanted to bring you on. I saw you posting about being bold and outrageous. And I think we've learned that. And I just wanted to know what that meant to you.
That was actually the theme that, and actually I have the draft of a manuscript that I really should finish for him that outlined that. But when he was trying to set up, think about 1972 because he was telling me he started in the 60s trying to set that up, but it's nearly 50 years ago, and he said that's back in the day when you had made in America that even if it was crap, you could sell it anywhere in the world. And says so. Productivity was booming, and then here he is trying to push a reliability program about efficiency and profitability and and it was obviously a tough
And why
sell
do
in
we
that.
need that, right? Why do we need that when we're doing great?
And that's where his foresight came back in. He says, well, this isn't going to last forever. And he said he was always enamored with the fact that planes could stay in the air more reliably than because he was engineering and maintenance manager at a large chemical plant. And then he said it was failures were just everywhere. And why can't I get the consistency of flight into my manufacturing plant? And that's where he took an interest in the reliability engineering in the aviation industry and said, well, why can't I bring those principles over into my plant? And that's exactly what he did. And what turned them around was that they had I think you're somewhat familiar with Hopewell, but there's three major of the allied chemical plants in this area. And they all feed each other. And at that time, it represented their nylon business for making carpets. And
Hmm.
there was about 5,000 people that worked in those three facilities. And all of a sudden, at some period in time, this was in the late 60s, that the yields dropped off 50%, and nobody could figure out why. It was almost instantaneously. It was a matter of weeks. And they had people coming from all over the world to try to, we got to get this back up. We got to get this back up. And finally, they heard this guy Latino talking about this reliability stuff for years, and they said, well, why don't we give him a chance? We got nothing to lose. And this is where the first bold and outrageous story comes from. But he was my father was from New York, and we're even though our name is Latino, it's often mistaken for Hispanic, but we're all Italian. We're half Sicilian, half Italian, and he's a deal maker. So when they came to him and they wanted his team to go ahead and take a look at the situation, he made a deal. He said, I tell you what, he says, you give me and my team a year and you also clear the path for me so that I get cooperation and not resistance. And he says, if I turn this plant around in a year, then you go ahead and you'll set up a corporate R&D group for reliability engineering. And then he said, if I don't turn it around in a year, then he said, I'll quit. Now, you have to understand what that means in terms of courageousness, because he had 5 kids between the age of 4 and 14. So
Wow.
when you look at that, well, if I was that smart when I was a kid, I'd have been worried to hear that.
Yeah, we would
But
all been scared, just waiting. Like, is he going to do his job? We'd be, go to work, Dad. Go to work.
Dad, I want that bike. What are you doing?
Right.
But he was so confident in his convictions about what he could do, because he had been doing it in his plant, and he within a year he turned it from the worst performer in the world to the best in the world, and that launched in 1972 the corporate R&D group. It was actually called Reliability Center for them at that time, and when we became independent, it just took off the Allied name. So I mean, that's what I mean by bold and outrageous. He always he he put a little twist on it. He said bold and a little bit outrageous. He says you get too outrageous, people fire you. He goes, but you have to make it outrageous enough that it stands out. And in your webinar last night, I was bringing that up when people were asking about how to make their mark. I learned from him that you can't just go out there and tell people what they want to hear to sell something. Is that you got to tell people what they don't want to hear, and you got to do it in a tactful way, and then you have to be able to produce results.
Yeah, and I think that's key to note, that we do have to the boldness, I guess, is to believe in that idea, right? And that it's right, and to be able to speak up about it. And I think the thing that was most difficult when you are in that moment and you're believing in it, to see, like, why doesn't everybody else get this? And so the people that can see the future that you're kind of talking about earlier, like, I'm so far ahead of you, you have to kind of back up to where you are and what your audience is, and where are they, and can you wait on them? Can you give them and explain these tools or concepts that they need to know, and help them get to where you are? I think that's super important. And Bob, I have been learning from your family for many years now, but you know, just the whole concept of root cause analysis, which is in everything. And you talk about that culture, or that way of life for you. And I think you know even that, the root cause analysis, that if you'll look at just that, you can do that in your health, right? What's causing this problem with your health. You can really do it in anything.
Sure.
um and that stands out for me, as a kind of, anybody can understand this. And when we're trying to get buy-in for these things, it just makes sense, if you're trying to figure out what's happening, that you find that root cause.
Yeah, and I'm going to clarify that, because it took me decades to learn this, but the singular use of cause is that that's a misnomer, because it's really root cause is that virtually anything that you're going to look at, it's not going to be one factor that's going to cause that to happen. It's going to be a multitude of things that happen to combine up on a given day, converge, and cause a string of things to happen that led up to it.
So
And that
so
and
true.
that gets into a whole nother thing about nobody in the RCA business likes the term RCA, because it's a bad it's misinterpreted, it's ill defined as a term in the industry for being of value. It's useless to me, because there's no universal definition of it. So if I sit there and I tell people, everybody tells me they do RCA, I mean, their form of RCA could be anything from a bar napkin with writing on it, to a full blown investigations like we promote. So comparing all of them equally and weighting them equally is not a fair comparison. So that's why I kind of go on rants about RCA, because a lot of people will use that to their advantage to knock the RCA industry,
Mm.
because the term itself is ill defined, and they'll say it's lacking. A lot of people will define RCA in total as being the equivalent of 5 whys, which means I ask why 5 times in a linear fashion. So that makes all failures linear. That I'm only asking the question why and not how could, and that we always end up with one root cause. And I don't subscribe to that. There's a reason you don't see investigators at major, serious, and complex failures coming out of the press conference with a 5 whys tree.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, and I love to, we talk a lot about kind of leadership and people and, why people do things and that leads to failures. Sometimes the question why may have something that is completely opposite of that process or that, problem that you're trying to figure out. It may be nothing related to the equipment at all and have to do with the person itself, which I think is fascinating and really been diving into that more recently.
Well, I mean, again, this is in my humble opinion. The RCA to me is a merging of the physical sciences and the social sciences. Unfortunately, most people associate RCA with just the physical sciences and mechanical failure, and they
Mhm.
stop at things where something broke, they figure out why it broke in terms of I'm going to change the vendor, or I'm going to, the materials were messed up, or things of that nature where we just replace parts. But inevitably there's always going to be a person associated that made a decision error to do something they shouldn't have, or they should have done something and didn't. And when you go through that, you can choose to go ahead and blame them and say, if I was doing that, hindsight's going to kill it because it's always 2020. But if I was in there, that I would have never done that. That's not the way that it works either. Blaming is not going to make it go away. The meat in our true RCA, holistic RCA, is in understanding why good people made a bad decision on that day and that time, because they didn't come to work. I mean, that's how they feed their family. They didn't come to work and say, my goal is going to be to have a bad outcome today. So the crux of an RCA to me is understanding the rationale of why they thought it was the right decision that day. And inevitably, what you're going to find with that is that there were systems that fed that decision, whether it was training, the typical training, whether it was the purchasing system, because purchasing agents are getting a bunch of bonuses while they're buying cheaper parts, and the maintenance costs are going up. I'm not nobody trained me. I'm not qualified. Well, that's also a management system problem. That's a less than adequate management system, because how come I don't know I got people in the field that aren't qualified? So that there's a lot of things that go into that decision making process, and once you get beneath the decision itself, that's all dealing with social sciences. Everything as a result of the decision going forward, that's the physical sciences, because after you make the decision, then the cause and effect trail, the error trail, is going to be physically observable. But when your cogs are going in your head to make a decision, nobody can see what's going on in your head.
Yeah, so with that, like how do you, I mean, on your line of work, you've heard tons of stories, I'm sure, but how do you figure out that it's somebody that's causing that or that element? Like how do you go about discovering that?
Well, I mean, our tool of choice is what we call a logic tree. So, I mean, it's a reconstructive tool that's based on cause and effect logic. And a lot of people will say it doesn't work because it's linear, but there's absolutely no reason for it to be linear. Because if I'm asking how could something happen, I'm coming up with all of the possibilities. And then the key to any RCA to make it stand up is going to be evidence. You can't just take hearsay and let it fly as fact. You have to be able to go out. I mean, think of think of any investigative occupation. An air crash accident, a trucking accident. Oh, we don't need to go there for the evidence. We'll just figure it out in a room with a bunch of post-its and craft paper. So you really need, if you're working backwards from the facts, say just picture a crime scene, and that's why they put the tape off over there. And there's going to be
Right.
things in that crime scene that have to be explained. So now you're working backwards and you're going to say, well, how could this happen? And how could this happen? And when you get to the person, you're going to change the how could questioning into, well, why did that person do that? Because I don't want to ask how could somebody do that. In the physics world, how could is an appropriate question because the physics aren't going to change. But when I get down to a person, I'm switching from deductive logic to inductive logic, and I want to be between the ears of that person, put myself in their position, and say, what was going on that day where this felt right, like the right thing to do, and it's usually perfectly logical. It makes reasonable sense that whatever they did, and whoever else would probably have done the same thing, and it's just interesting that we tend to blame people. I do this in my class, and I say, we tend to blame people based on the outcomes of their decisions, but in a true RCA, we want ourselves. We would want to be judged based on the intent of our decision, not the outcome. And that's exactly
Yes.
what an RCA should do. It says, I'm not just, if I'm blaming someone, then I'm only doing it because of the outcome. If you're looking at intent, then you're really interested in stopping it from happening again, because the systems are bad and somebody else is put in the same position, they're going to make a very similar decision.
Yeah, so we're wanting to keep our people and understand our people so that we can, make that better for them or the next person. So I feel like I've learned so much, and your story about the airplane's reliability, it reminds me of sitting in a room full of water professionals and them telling that story and being like, "Well, it's just water leaking," and so I always remember that. And I'm like, why can't we get people to understand that that's a resource just as valuable? We have to have water for life too. And so I get it. It's that mindset change and that culture change and really caring about the big picture. So, Bob, we have so much fun, and I know you do, in being able to teach and kind of go through writing books and being out there in the field. What's been the, I guess, highlight of your career?
That's a good question. I think it's just the fact that where I get to go and who I get to meet. I'm like you in the sense that I'm a very social person. So COVID is is depressing to me because
For sure.
because you can't,
Like do you get like psyched up with the plants still? Like when you get to go into plants and things, I mean, I love a plant tour. It's one of my favorite things. But does it ever get old?
No, it doesn't get old. It's because there's always new people that you're meeting. I mean, it's
Hmm.
not the equipment or any of that, the technology that's as impressive to me, but it's the light bulbs going off in people's heads when you teach them how to break down a seemingly chaotic thing that happened into its manageable parts, and then they say, "Oh, well, that makes sense." And when you're you're going against blaming people, and sometimes that's not the politically correct thing to do, because we got a head's got to roll here, but you got
Hmm.
to be bold and outrageous. I wrote a paper about oftentimes managements, they trying to be PC with this while I'm on a podcast. They well, they're looking at blaming someone, and I says, in my business, because it's the people who hired me that come in to look at this, and I'm working with their people. I'm just a facilitator, but you're going to find systemic flaws, and management in a lot of cases is okay when I'm blaming this person for making the decision, but when you get into flawed systems, organizational systems, then all of a sudden it's a different thing.
Yeah,
They're
get
saying,
out of
well,
here, Bob.
you're blaming me.
Yeah,
and
wait a minute. This isn't where I saw this going.
and I wrote a paper, I forgot the name of it, but I said sometimes you just have to look in the mirror and face the facts that I'm part of the problem. And I think that's that progressive managements understand that, and the non-progressive ones that choose to blame, then you're just going to get really a lot of practice at doing RCA over and over again the wrong way, because you're refusing to accept the facts. Those who accept that the systems are bad and fix them, they're the ones who progress.
Oh, that's good stuff right there. Well, Bob, is there anything that while we've been talking, that you really wanted to share? I know you've been part of our video chats and our talks on leadership and, just, overall the people, right? I hear that, right? It's the people that we work with. But anything else that you want to leave with our listeners?
I had one note here, Charlie. It was from my dad's day, but it was another education for me in bold and outrageous. Can I go ahead and tell a quick story?
Yes, please.
We were going to hold a class in downtown Richmond, Virginia, at the Omni Hotel, and you know how hotel works. We had to put a block on rooms, and then there's a deadline that you have to tell them yay or nay or how many rooms. Well, we were unable to meet the minimum break evens for us to hold a course, so we canceled it, and we told the hotel and on the on the day before our deadline date, but somebody at the hotel didn't turn it in till the next day. So they were asked. They were telling us that we had to pay for the 20 rooms for the 3 nights, and they were being really rude about it in the when it came to them wanting their money. So my father, he never really got upset. He just got back at you. It's another Italian
Right.
thing. And when he ended up telling them one, he goes, "I tell you what," he goes, "I will pay." He goes, and since I have these 20 rooms here, and you're making me pay for the meals and everything like that, he says, there's a homeless shelter up the road here called the Daily Planet. He goes, and I'm going to invite them to fill those 20 rooms in your nice hotel for the next 3 nights. And he said, to boot, I'm going to have the news station here to show what a good citizen I am, and I'm going to write it off on my taxes.
I love this.
Within minutes, they said, no worries, just go ahead.
Right. Get on out of here.
They
It's
waived
fine.
all the monies.
Well, they also probably realized, that it wasn't his fault, right? Like that, okay, we were trying to get something over on him, but
yeah, which
he showed us.
that just gets into bad customer service because it wasn't the first time we had done classes there, and why are you going to risk doing something like that for
But you have to be quick-witted to be able to do that, like being able to like respond to people in the moment. And I think that's huge, right? Like,
well, if you got 2 minutes, I'll try another one on you because these
okay.
just are impressed in my mind. We worked in Allied for umpteen years, and we were in their purchasing building. It's a 20,000 square foot rectangular building, if you can envision it, and the reliability group occupied half of it. So just put a line down the middle of the rectangle across the rectangular building, and there were a hallway that went around the perimeter, and then there were offices on the outside and offices on the inside. Well, when we separated from Allied and we were a different company now, nobody in the building treated us like that. They treated everything that was in our space. They're still using our kitchen, they're using our copiers, they're using, and he couldn't stop them from doing that. They're using our conference rooms. So one day on the weekend, he had painters come in, and he had our walls painted orange and the carpet changed to orange. So that when people came to work on Monday, they're looking like, what the hell went on here?
Yes, what happened?
That was his way of saying, this is my space. I'm
Yes.
letting you know that now. And then about 6 months later, he put it back to it's a warmer color.
That's hilarious.
So those were my examples for bold and outrageous. That's how you get people's attention.
Yeah, orange or red, right? I like red.
It looked like you were going into hell, I tell you.
I definitely don't want to paint my room orange. I'm from Alabama, so when we start talking orange, I'm thinking Tennessee and Auburn, with the sports. So the other thing though that you made me think about when you're talking is just like that advice for somebody coming in to our industry and like what you would tell somebody. So with all that and kind of like making your statements, what would you tell somebody who is in this maintenance and reliability space?
Well, I just think that it's exciting to me the proaction and the foresight part of it, because
Mhm.
it goes against the grain. If you just want to become a fixer, then then that's what you want to do. But if you want to go in and you want to be able to make things run reliably and cost effectively and protect the lives of people, I mean that's to me is about just operational reliability. And I hear a lot of these conversations about the difference between maintenance and reliability. And I tell the story back then, in 1972, nobody ever heard of reliability, much less could spell it. And now we're looking at corporately, where does this go on the organizational chart? And the corporation wanted it under maintenance. And my father says, absolutely not. He says, why would I put a proactive group underneath a reactive group? He says they will never do any proactive work if they are subordinate to maintenance. He says they have to be isolated from maintenance, because reliability are tomorrow people and maintenance people are today people.
Mhm.
And on the organizational chart, they absolutely they were parallel to each other and not subordinate to each other. So I think that makes a lot of sense when you look at that, because if I'm a maintenance engineer and you've given me reliability tasks, I'm always going to be doing that maintenance work, because they're still going to be clamoring for me to come out there for the urgency of the day,
That's
and
right.
they're never going to give me a chance to pursue opportunities.
Yeah, it's what's happening right now. It's in your face, that's urgent, right? It's like the phone ringing, ringing, ringing. You just cannot let it keep ringing because it's distracting you, right? So similarly, making sure that we address that and have them in the right category. And you've been, bringing this forward to everybody. I love the forward thinking. When you were talking earlier, I thought it's really changing the way you think, because you really respond to things as they come to you a lot of the times. And so to be able to sit and think about more deeply about these things, that's how we get to more efficient systems.
Well, I'll tell you how it worked to my disadvantage. It was when I was in high school, I wouldn't say I was the best student or the best child, but I, it seemed like I got caught whenever I was doing something wrong. I got caught all the time, and it was just because my father was 10 steps ahead of me. He could see it. He could see it coming, and then as long as it wouldn't kill me, he'd let me run its course. And then
Yep.
then I'd pay the price for it. But and now that I'm older and I have kids, I can see the exact same thing, and I can see the frustration with my daughter going, "How does he know?"
That's right. I tell my kids that all the time. They're not getting anything by me. I've done it, or I know about it. So get you. So anyway, well, Bob, I've enjoyed this so much, and just getting to know you over the years has been such a great thing. How can people get in touch with you if they want to connect after this?
Well, I think I spent a lot of time on LinkedIn, so obviously just looking up a LinkedIn profile for Robert,
Yeah.
Bob Latino, and our website is reliability.com. Pretty easy to remember. We're releasing a whole new entity of a software solution that we've given it its own website, which is called easyrca.com. And I welcome the interactions. Charlie, you're aware of that. That I'll talk to anybody who'll listen, but and I try to be as giving as I can to help people make their mark in this industry, and also to give them the tools and advice they need to be successful. So that's pretty much, I'm at that point in my life and my age where it's just I just want to help.
And he does. So if you do follow him on LinkedIn, you can see how supportive he is for our industry and all the people that he's connected to. I've been thankful of your support with my team and myself. So thanks, Bob. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meetup.
I would like to return the favor and say also, I thank you and Vince and Sienna and your whole team because of the difference that you do make in this industry. So thank you for being so giving as well.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.
That brings
We're
us to
back.
the end of our show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Do us a favor, subscribe, rate and review the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you watch us or listening to us. We read those reviews and we really appreciate them.
Yeah, and you can always reach us at Empowering Pumps using that hashtag Empowering Industry Podcast, or email us at podcast@empoweringpumps.com. Also, I want to point out that we're going to have a huge celebration next week. Don't miss next week's episode because we're going to celebrate 1 year, Bethany. We've been doing this 52 weeks.
That's so crazy. It went by very fast and slow at the same time.
Yes. Well, you missed some of it too. So
I know. And I was out for 3 months of it. So, or 2 months, whatever. But yeah, we're really excited. We're going to get some people together that were guests on the show, and Charli and I are going to have a little Zoom, and then we can share that with you at the end of next week's episode. And just forewarning, it might be a celebration the entire episode next week because
absolutely,
it's worth
I think it's worth it. Yeah, we can celebrate you. You can give us a bunch of shout outs online. Maybe we should shout out before. Maybe this week will lead up so that you can be mentioned and you know make us feel great about all this work we did all year, right? Okay, that's enough there.
Yeah. So we'll be back every Monday with a new episode.
So until then, be empowering.